Okay, these are my notes from the 2001 Berkshire Hathaway meeting. Charlie Munger says the mistakes that have been most extreme in Berkshire's history are mistakes of omission. They don't show up in our figures, they show up in opportunity cost. Buffett clarifies this by saying that these missed opportunities were within our area of competence, not a tech stock that went from 1 to 100, but companies they understand. Also, their mistakes were buying, but buying too small. Later, Warren Buffett said something interesting. He said, "We buy businesses with a pessimistic attitude." Then he said, when asked why they had so much cash, even though Phil Fisher said it should be deployed or returned to shareholders, Warren answered, "We don't have a lot of cash around just to have a cash position. We want money to be employed, but we'll never employ it just to employ it." On growth stocks versus value stocks. Growth and value are indistinguishable. Growth is part of the value equation. There's no such thing as growth stocks or value stocks the way Wall Street generally portrays them, as being contrasting asset classes. Growth usually is a positive for value, but only when it means that by adding capital now, you add more cash availability later on at a rate that's considerably higher than the current rate of interest. So if you tell me that you own a business that's going to grow to the sky, and isn't that wonderful, I don't know if that's wonderful or not until I know what the economics are of that growth. How much you have to put in today and how much you will reap from putting that in today later on. Airlines are a classic case. They've been a growth business since the beginning, but the growth has been the worst thing that happened to it. It's been great for the American public, but growth has been a curse in the airline business because more and more capital has been put into the business at inadequate returns. Anybody that tells you you ought to have your money in growth stocks or value stocks really does not understand investing, said Warren Buffett. On the definition of growth stock investing, Charlie Munger said, "We're especially partial to laying out large sums of money under circumstances where we won't have to be smart again. In other words, if we buy good businesses run by good people at reasonable prices, there's a good chance that you people will prosper for many decades without more intelligence at headquarters. And you can say, in a sense, that's growth stock investing." What business schools would he want to go to today? Bruce Greenwald's class at Columbia, lots of practicality, plus Bruce's new book. Also, the University of Florida was endowed for value investing, and also at the University of Missouri. That was Warren Buffett. Charlie Munger says most of what's taught at most schools is not what we believe. And he said, "I recommend Jack McDonald at Stanford Graduate School. Most business schools teach what we don't believe." Warren said Bob Kirby comes in and works with Jack. What you really want a course on investing to be is how to value a business. That's what the game is about. If you don't know how to value a business, you don't know how to value a stock, said Warren Buffett. Then Charlie said, most business schools don't know how to teach it. It's pathetic. It's good for accounting or managing people, but not investing. Many CEOs don't know how to value businesses before they acquire them. Financial institutions make us nervous when they're trying to do well. That sounds paradoxical, but that's the way it is, said Charlie. Financial institutions don't get into trouble by running out of cash in most cases. Other businesses you can spot that way, but financial institutions can go beyond the point of solvency while they still have money around, so it's hard to see problems until after they happen. Opportunity comes to the prepared mind, said Charlie. All intelligent people think in terms of opportunity cost. Warren said it's a whole lot easier to make money on the long side than the short side. Being short something which keeps going up, and they call on you for margin, it's just not worth it to have that much irritation in your life, said Charlie Munger. It isn't that hard to make money somewhere else with less irritation. Warren said CEOs by nature got there by not listening to naysayers or criticism, so if an intelligent person is doing something dumb, it's very difficult to change them. Question: if you found businesses, 10 of them, selling at 2/3 the asset value, would you buy them? Answer: you'd probably do okay if you bought them all, but if you could find so many such businesses at discounts, they'd be mediocre or bad businesses. So you'd probably also be able to find good businesses at discounts too. Also, cash on the books may get used quickly. Then someone asked a question on how to apply valuation analysis to real estate. Charlie answered, I much prefer business investment to real estate investment. Next is notes from the 2002 Berkshire Hathaway meeting. Question on why he sold some stocks. Answer: he generally would sell to buy something else when he didn't have cash and didn't want to borrow money. Now he has more cash than ideas, but he sells when their competitive advantage has eroded. A classic case is the newspaper business, said Warren Buffett. Question: how to pick an ETF. Answer: pick the S&P like Vanguard or one with low fees, but don't put your money in all at once, but buy gradually. He recommends Bogle's books. It's hard to pick the winners or winning times, so don't put a big chunk in at once. There's no PE ratio or PB ratio, that's price to earnings or price to book, that we can look at that tells us the best time. It doesn't work that way, and not that easy. You admit you don't know the answer and you just buy the S&P, not try to choose sectors. On how to measure banks or other companies. You can't measure all banks with the same formula. People always want a formula. They read The Intelligent Investor and think that somewhere they're going to give me a little formula and I'm going to plug this in and make lots of money, and it really doesn't work that way. What you're trying to do is look at all the cash the business will produce between now and Judgment Day and discount it back at a rate that's appropriate and then buy it a lot cheaper than that. Whether the money comes from a bank or an internet company or a Berkshire company, the money all spends the same. The question is, what are the economic characteristics of the internet company or the bank that tell you how much cash they're going to generate over long periods in the future? And I would come to very different answers on M&T Bank versus another bank. So I wouldn't want to have a single yardstick or a relative PE that I went by, said Warren Buffett. Someone asked a question on how to avoid getting taken in by frauds. Charlie Munger said, I think you're asking for a lot if you want some simple way of not being taken in by the frauds of the world. Enormously talented people deliberately go into fraud or drift gradually into it because the culture carries them there. And the frauds get very sophisticated and they're very slickly done. I think it's part of the business of getting wisdom in life that you avoid getting taken by the frauds. Good question, but no short answer. There are whole fields you can avoid because there's too much fraud in it. The number of times we're going to buy into a company because people are talking about EBITDA is going to be about zero. EBITDA, by the way, is EBITDA, which stands for Earnings Before Interest, Taxes, Depreciation, and Amortization. So earnings before all the major expenses. If we take all the people in the world who've talked about EBITDA and all those who haven't, there are more frauds in the first group percentage-wise by a substantial margin, very substantial. Telecoms are spending every dime that comes in. It isn't cash flow. The cash is flowing out. You can look at the statement, and there's billions of dollars supposedly in depreciation and so on, but interest is an expense. Actually, taxes are an expense. Anybody that tells you that making a lot of money before taxes in terms of EBITDA is meaningful, you get depreciation by laying out money ahead of time. It's the worst kind of expense. We look for float, which is where we get the money and then pay out later on. You start paying taxes when you start making money. On acquisitions, 2/3 of acquisitions are bad for the acquirer and take so much time. We make many acquisitions and take 90 minutes and do well. Why? The answer is we're patient enough to wait for the no-brainers, said Charlie Munger. Out of 10 businesses bought in 2001, earnings were only 25% of projections. Projections were 4 times what really happened, said Warren Buffett. Somebody once defined hell in a legal system as a place with endless due process and no justice, and we're getting close. And similarly, in the corporate world, if you have endless due diligence and no horse sense, you've just described a corporate hell, at least for the people who own the business or who are trying to sell it. Warren Buffett's advice: 1. Think of stocks as businesses, not as pieces of paper. 2. Then think about what makes a good business. We were right on predicting that many companies were scams or overvalued in a Ponzi scheme-like speculation effect, but if we had shorted, we would have lost money because we didn't know how long or how much higher they'd go. So that's why Warren Buffett does not like shorting. Stock options are both an expense and a dilution of shares, said Charlie Munger. Buffett said 6% a year would be an acceptable rate of return. Buffett tells the analogy of a genie offering a 16-year-old boy any car of his dreams on one condition: that car is the only car he'll ever get for the rest of his life. You'd read the operation manual twice, change the oil more often than recommended, you'd keep it garaged, etc. Treat your body and mind the same way. You can't wait till 80 to take care of it. Do it over your lifetime and develop your mind. This is your greatest asset, just like any other asset divorced from yourself. Then they talked about how a margin of safety saved them when things went very bad. So that's the importance of having a margin of safety. Real estate is not a commodity, and it's usually accurately priced. It's usually not mispriced. Occasionally, big opportunities exist when there's chaos in financing, said Warren Buffett. C corporations are not good for holding real estate like Berkshire. REITs are better.